Hello, my name is Hendrik Weber from Norway.
Hi, I'm Bruce Gagnon from Brunswick, Maine.
Hello, I'm Blaz Kavcic from Slovenia.
And this is Dateline News and Conversation. We've got our, I hope, weekly news and discussion show. Kostas Izikos is not able to be with us tonight, and we have Blaz Kavcic from Slovenia joining us. Gentlemen, there is so much to talk about, but the first thing I want to put to you, and Bruce, will put it to you first because you're in the United States of America. Tucker Carlson got to interview Vladimir Putin, and it will be shown tonight, your time, 6 p.m. Eastern. I think there are going to be millions and millions of viewers around the world watching this. We will have to wait till tomorrow morning because it'll be 2 a.m. here, and I don't think I can make it, even for something I think is momentous and historic. Bruce, your thoughts on, first of all, Tucker getting the interview with Putin, and number two, what do you think the reaction is going to be in the United States?
Since Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox News, he's been showing a lot of independent spirit and interviewing a lot of different kind of people and really getting into the war issues in a bigger way than he did even before. I think it's interesting to hear the mainstream media in the United States crying in jealousy because he got to interview Vladimir Putin and they didn't. There's already some political types that are calling for him to in some way be prosecuted. One guy said that he was going to be the next Julian Assange. And I noticed some hack from the EU is saying that he should be prosecuted and restricted and sanctioned by Europe for having interviewed the war criminal Vladimir Putin. So, it's turning upside down the Western narrative. How dare he do so? And anyone that does that must be punished in some way. So good for him. I'm looking forward to listening to it. And I'm sure a lot of people, as Tucker himself said in his promo video that I watched, he said, don't be a slave. Allow yourself to hear another opinion. What's the harm? And that's a good way to put it.
All right, Bruce, I have to ask you this. You and I both know how hard and fast the majority of Americans are wired to believe everything bad about Russia and Putin. Tucker sometimes has over 100 million views to his telecast on his own network. Do you think there's a chance that he might break through and wake up some Americans? Or do you think that that vast majority that are just so hardwired about Vladimir Putin will turn around and castigate Tucker? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it'll be some of each. There'll be some people that will take a chance and pick the forbidden fruit. But there are others, probably Democrats, that will be too afraid to. They have to do what they're told. So I think Republicans and independents will mostly be the ones watching it, but there'll be some Democrats for sure.
Do you think Donald Trump is going to jump on and piggyback?
Oh, I think, if anybody benefits from this, Donald Trump will. It'll help, I think, quell some of the Russophobia in the United States to some degree. I just know that it's probably likely that Hillary Clinton's going to have a heart attack over it. That's for sure.
Okay, that's great, Bruce. Hendrik, what are your thoughts on Tucker and how people are going to react in Europe, for example?
Yes, of course, it's fantastic that he got an interview with Vladimir Putin, and it will be very interesting to see what these two guys talking about. So that also shows us that alternative media becomes more and more important in the world, and that is very good. Nevertheless, if there is a guy like Tucker Carlson with millions and millions of followers, I'm always a little bit critical, because it's possible that these guys with so many power in their hands, with so many followers, can be corrupt or yeah. So I'm a little bit critical always, but it will be very interesting to see this interview, of course. I'm not sure what the media in Norway or Scandinavia will say about it, because maybe they didn't talk about it at all. So I would like to hear you, Blaz. What do you think, as you are coming from an European country? Do you think they will talk about this interview in the normal media? I'm not sure about it. Maybe they say nothing about it, at least in Scandinavia.
Let me ask you this before we go over to Blaz. Do you think that it might be banned, blackout, total blackout, and nobody will publish this in Europe? What, Hendrik, your thoughts before we go down to Blaz?
No, I don't think that will be banned. But Norwegian media, that is copy and paste from American, US media. They are looking in the big newspapers in the US and write almost the same story. So, so for them, it's even more easy to hide the whole interview, because if nobody talks about it, then nobody knows. Only these people in Norway or Scandinavia are interested, really, or searching by themselves on media platforms like YouTube, Rumble, or whatever. Yeah, so I'm not sure what will happen if the big media outlets will talk about it.
Okay, so Blaz, I'm going to throw it over to you. Your thoughts on Tucker even getting this interview. I wonder what you think might have taken place. Tucker said he wanted the American people to hear Vladimir Putin's position, his side of things. And I'm sure they're talking about the war in Ukraine. But as Hendrik was questioning Blaz, do you think it will be banned in Europe? And I also want to know from you, are people in Slovenia even aware of this?
Okay, I would like to remind us all on the event 201, where it was, among other things, it was a plan what to do, how to perform the COVID-19 project. And one of the strategies was flooding the zone, which means overflowing people with information. And information is then a mix of lies, of truths, of semi-truths, of facts without context. So I look at this event, like my colleagues before have expressed, generally very positively. It's a great thing. And I hope that the positive impact of this interview will be predominantly in the States, in a way that people will start to get more positive information about Russia as a country, about Vladimir Putin as a personality, which I don't want to romanticize or to criticize, but I think he deserves a fair assessment, and it has not been done so far. So it is a positive event, but let's not over romanticize it, because nothing is happening just as a coincidence. It has been planned. And as Lenin said, among other things, when you are faced with opposition, the best tactic is to control it, to create it yourself. So we are in a very complicated positions where all the sounds on the public information market are some in one way or another controlled. There are no miracles. So who is Tucker Carlson? Where is he coming from? He's a positive event. He covers a certain section of a public in the States and worldwide. And his message is positive. It will be for sure very heavily shadow banned, or at least mocked to a certain extent all over the place. But our kind of people will find a way and will be analyzing it objectively. Now, what I would like to say is, what are these guys, President Putin and Tucker Carlson, what questions have they raised so far? Have they identified globalism and explained to the public their attitude towards globalism? My approach is, you might know, you know it in detail, Regis, is proposal of a multidisciplinary approach, which means, have we identified globalism as a war against people and nature? And I did not find systemic analysis and vision, neither on Tucker's side nor by Putin. Of course, in Slovenia, there is a very positive attitude, I would say, generally towards Russia, Russian culture, Russian nation. It is maybe peculiar, but there are still monuments from First and Second World War, from the Russian soldiers from the First World War who died in 1916 in Slovenia, and Soviet soldiers who lost their lives at the end of Second World War, and these monuments are still respected. President Putin has been visiting Slovenia in 2016. So, and then of course things got more negative. Well, I think to conclude, things will be banned, shadow banned, censored. It's a positive event, but let's not over dramatize it. It will maybe help rising awareness by the masses, but neither of the two very important persons have addressed the main controversies of today.
Yeah, thank you, Blaz. Well, I think given the reaction from people in the EU, the government, who are wanting him locked up and jailed, wanting him sanctioned, wanting him to become thrown in jail and rot away like Julian Assange, to people in the United States, they want him dead. So I think this thing really has been dramatized. And I think it was interesting that Tucker has waited, I don't know what it is, 36 hours or what it's going to be before he's publishing this. I think everybody was waiting for it to come out almost immediately. So I think this is a huge dramatized event that I think, in spite of the shadow banning, in spite of maybe people not being allowed to see it, it's become an international event. My only hope as an American is that Tucker maybe asked him one or two questions and just let Putin explain what he feels are the important issues. Definitely the war, the thing about a new global order, who Putin has been one of the major proponents of a new paradigm that is really 180 degrees opposite from American hegemony. So I think, as we all agree, the possibility of this, of being a positive thing, is pretty significant. We can only hope. I want to go on to the next topic. I think it's related. The United States Senate failed to pass an amendment to send funding to Ukraine. Bruce, going to start with you. I think this is huge. And in light of the news we're getting coming out of Ukraine right now, it's a matter of desperation. Zelensky is desperate. He's talking about firing Zaluzhny, his top general, and his subordinate commanders. He's talking about firing people in government who haven't been loyal to him. It seems pretty well known that without the funding that Zelensky and Ukraine have been getting from both the United States and the diminished funding from the EU, is causing tremendous economic stress in Ukraine. Bruce, how significant is that the United States Senate failed to pass funding this time for Ukraine?
Well, I think it's very complex. There's three key issues that are all wrapped together in this bundle. There's the controversy over the border, the southern border. It is virtually open with tens of thousands of people weekly just flowing into the United States. The border states are overwhelmed. They're putting people on buses and sending them to the liberal states, Massachusetts, Chicago, Illinois, New York City, and saying, you know, you liberals, you want an open border? Well, here, help deal with some of these people. And it's causing massive problems all over the country. So that's part of this package. The other one is funding for Israel that is becoming controversial in the Congress, but is not yet that controversial in order to stop it. Israel's likely going to get more money from the United States Congress. And then finally, money for Ukraine. There are people in the House and the Republicans in the House and in the Senate who are opposed to it, but not enough of them to stop it. I think 100%. So they tried to put together a package deal for all three of these things, and it didn't fly because there's somebody against each one of them. So I think they're going to have to go back and try to do it one at a time. But I think the Ukraine funding is probably the least popular of any of the issues. The Republicans don't want to deal with the border. They want to, as much as they're opposed to this open border, they want to let Biden kind of hold on to this mess as the 2024 elections are approaching. So the Republicans are not in a hurry to solve that problem. And again, some Republicans in each the House and Senate are opposed to Ukraine funding. I'm not clear on how many it is. Is it enough? I don't know. And Israel, they're going to get money. AIPAC still really controls the Congress. And so Israel's going to get some more money. But that's becoming increasingly controversial.
Well, thanks for that, Bruce. That insight probably that Hendrik and Blaz don't have, but we're going to find out. Hendrik, what are your thoughts? What do you know about the United States Senate has failed to pass funding for Ukraine?
I have heard it, but of course I don't have this insight as Bruce has. For me, it's of course interesting to hear what's happening in the US, but it's more interesting even what is going on now in Europe, because we have relied on the US policy to fund Ukraine or the war there, whatever it costs. And now we have to find our own solution. What are we doing now? So I think there are sitting many politicians from the European Union and also in Scandinavia who are thinking, shit, what are we doing now? Are we funding them or not? The US is going out. What are we doing now? So that will be very interesting. I don't have heard something about that from Jens Stoltenberg, but there are already Norwegian politicians who have nominated him to a Nobel Peace Prize this year. For me, he should be prosecuted as war criminal, but we are living in crazy times. So I'm not sure what European countries or Scandinavia will do. Will they continue funding Ukraine? They say yes, but if they really do it, I don't know in the long term.
Well, thank you for that, Hendrik. Blaz, your thoughts?
I agree with everything that was said, and maybe I will try just to add few short thoughts from my perspective. Regarding this, I would first maybe rather call it United States Senate succeeds not to pass. It's a positive event, but it's just a phase. So we should understand that until we have millionaires and billionaires sitting in United States Imperial Center in the Parliament, nothing significant will change. There will be very interesting events, but the direction of travel of Titanic we are on will not change. So the system which brings into the Parliament of the Imperial Center persons like they are today cannot bring out different results. And discussion on the border is a very significant one. There is not enough people explaining how the borders should not be discussed in such a perverse way, because the migrants coming into Europe or into United States, the migrant waves are caused by the imperial wars. So the solution is not building the walls. Solution is stopping the wars and making it possible for the people to remain in Syria, in Lebanon, in Mexico, in Latin American states, and lead a peaceful life. And as long as these imperial powers are financed by us, the people, to do what they are doing, we will never be able to be successful fighting the consequences. United States are already the nation of the world with the highest percentage of populations in prisons. So let's build new prisons. Is this a solution? No, it's not a solution. We have to let people have a chance to lead a decent life, and we will not need prisons, and we will not need walls, and the borders will be less important. So let's fight the causes, not the consequences. This would be about the most important things which I think I could add to this discussion.
Well, thank you for that, Blaz.
I want to add to that. I think what Blaz just said is so important, because that is why most people are coming into the United States. They're coming from parts of the world where the United States foreign policy has destabilized their country, wars and regime changes and everything else. And that is indeed the primary cause of this migration. He's absolutely right.
Yeah, I think everybody will agree with that. At least everybody that's on our side, the way we think. I want to move now to funding issue again, but the headline is Netanyahu repeated again, the only solution is total victory. Blaz, when it comes to you this time, your thoughts on Israel, its position, and what's happening in Gaza, in Palestine.
I think we were forced now to understand deeper what Israel actually is. And Israel is not just a small national states. It is a battleship of globalism, and it has been generated as such an entity already with starting with Balfour Declaration, and then enforced. And after Second World War, when Israel was proclaimed to be a national state, things got worse and worse. And from the very beginning, the role of Israel was very clear. Israel is a battleship of globalism, controlling the oil business and the strategic interests, not of United States, but of the globalist interests globally. So I often hear how come Netanyahu is such a big boss. He comes to American parliament and he's the big star and so on. And he himself, he states how easily United States are controlled. And is he so clever? Is he so rich? What is behind it? It's no miracle. Behind it are the globalist interests, which are controlling United States and Israel. And very often, these globalist powers use Israel to maneuver American political decisions. So in one of our discussions, Regis, I explained that for us to seek for solutions, among other things, a correct positioning of religion is required, because the religion in this case is so abused. The Orthodox Jews' understanding of the Old Testament makes Jewish Orthodox Jews as supermensch once were the Germans, the Aryan race, and everybody else is lesser beings. And this is at the core of a problem. It's not only a problem of the elite today in Israel. The mentality of the majority of Israeli people today is very similar to the Germans before and during the Second World War. So the most terrible things has happened. The Jews, under the guidance of globalists, have become Nazis of today. And their attitude towards Palestinians, other Arabs, and other people can never be cured. So this goes also now to the thinking of a Chinese proposal of a two-state solution. I always thought a two-state solution might be a good way to go, but the last processes convinced me of the opposite. It's not possible. It's not possible to make any civilized country based on the principles of social governance, which are today practiced by the Israelis, and which was the practice for decades, actually. So, but Gaza is actually a playground, a test bed for the whole world. This is how globalists envision to control the population of the world. So we should look at these things very carefully. So there is no peace possible, and I'm not disappointed with Palestinians not accepting the ceasefire. because they are, it seems they are aware that temporary ceasefire is not going to bring a meaningful solution. So Israel clearly has plans to control the whole Middle East, not only the present territory of Israel. And such a mentality will have to disappear if we want to see the chances for the world peace.
Well, thank you for that analysis, Blaz. Hendrik, going to come over to you. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think Netanyahu is completely wrong if he wants to have a total victory, because he will not get a victory. Palestinians and Hamas is well known in their areas, of course, and it can be a really bloody fight. It's already going on. So I think it's not possible for Israel to win this as a war. I agree with Blaz. If we talk about a two-state solution with the idea from China, I don't know if it's possible anymore, a two-state solution, because what is left of Palestine? There is nothing left. I'm not an expert, but I would prefer maybe a one-state solution, like something like Switzerland has, with an autonomy in different areas with different languages. But I'm, of course, completely aware about it that this is not possible at the moment. But that would be maybe my preference. But I don't know. It's a very difficult situation. But I agree with Blaz that we should be very interested what will happen there in the next time.
All right, Bruce, your thoughts.
Well, I don't think this recent round of negotiations highlighted by Tony Blinken and Netanyahu, I don't think they ever intended anything to come of it. I think it was just a stall to gain more time, to kill more Palestinians, to put Palestinians in a difficult position, both in terms of humanitarian, starvation, disease spreading, people crowded along the Egypt border there in Rafah. Now it's like a fish in a barrel for Israel. They can just pick them off. I think they're going to end up killing 500,000 or more people, and before this stops. The world doesn't yet seem willing to stop them. The United States and the European Union, I think, are totally complicit in this slaughter of Palestinian people. And what Blaz said about the expansion of Israel is very important. Greater Israel, taking in Lebanon, Syria, parts of Jordan and Egypt. That's always been the plan. Make Israel bigger so they can control more of the resources in the Middle East. Make them a massive Western corporate-backed military base in the region. And that's still the plan. There is growing pressure on some of these Arab states like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, that have really been cozying up to Israel for a long time. Saudi Arabia has come out and said that unless there is a Palestinian state, there will be no relationship with Israel. So they're only saying that, I believe, because their own internal population is so upset with what's going on. So it's forcing some of these Arab countries that have been sitting on the fence for a long time to take stronger positions. But in the end, it's the United States and Israel the U.S. totally controlled foreign policy by AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee. There's no doubt about it. So everything the Biden administration is doing right now is just a show, just to make people think that they're trying to do something. In fact, the very day yesterday when the announcement came that Netanyahu was saying no deal, immediately the United States bombed in Baghdad. That was, to me, a sign. They're going after the Iraqi resistance that has been shelling some of the U.S. bases in both Iraq and in Syria. But it just goes to show what the real intentions of the United States and Israel are.
Well, you've been talking about this spreading. I don't think the rest of the Middle East wants to have anything to do with a greater Israel. That's my opinion. But I think Netanyahu's statement about total victory, and Bruce, what you're saying, they're just continuing to thumb their nose at the ICJ, at the rest of the world, all these protests of millions and maybe billions of people protesting around the world. Israel and the United States thumbs their nose and continues business as usual, which is death and destruction. On the other hand, people do have power. They are boycotting Israel. Israel economy has suffered tremendously from this war. Hamas has inflicted huge damage on Israel and their economy. And with a boycott, there's more damage. I had a guest on earlier this week that said Israel's economy is tattering. It's on the verge of collapse. And so I'm going to transition to the next topic.
Regis, may I just maybe add one thought, if it's okay?
Absolutely.
A personal experience with life in Israel and in Yugoslavia, because I would like to point out that it is never a problem of people fighting among themselves. I spent decades of my life in socialist Yugoslavia, where things were generally okay and harmonic, and then Yugoslavia was dismantled from outside. And one of the similar things was this propaganda started in the 90s with in the news there was news that Albanians are raping Serbian women in Kosovo. Because in the beginning of dismantling of Yugoslavia, Milosevic was a globalist player. He then changed his personal position, maybe a little bit like Orban. He changed his philosophy. But the similar mechanisms were applied. And it was a slaughterhouse in Yugoslavia in the 90s, more than 150,000 people killed. And it was the period where German President of European Parliament Schulz said, Europe and NATO are guarantors of peace. And people were slaughtered. But then years later, I went once to Bosnia and talked to people and so on, and everybody was explaining to me, we always had good relations, the Muslims and Croatians and Serbs. We don't know what happened actually. And I was in Israel maybe some 15 years ago as a judge for dog Hysteria. And I met a lot of very nice Israelis around the world and in Israel and so on. And I also visited this museum of Holocaust. And I'm very respectful of their historical experience. And I must say that at that period, there was no hatred among the people, Israelis I talked to, against the Arabs or Palestinians, and walking the streets and so on. I had nothing negative, no negative experiences. So it has been created from outside, And we should always understand that it's never a hatred of people among themselves if it's not channeled and fueled from the forces that then use these controversies among people. Just maybe to wrap up these personal experiences from Yugoslav times and from Israel.
Before we move on, Blaz mentioned Orban in Hungary. I'm very curious. I would love to hear both Blaz and Hendrik's analysis on why Hungary went ahead and agreed to funding Ukraine when they had seemed so opposed to it just days before.
Blaz, you want to take that first?
I can very shortly, but you had a very interesting friend of ours, Hungarian communist, who explained the situation of just yesterday, or when you had him on a channel. He's a very nice guy, and he explained the situation that he was so severely extorted, Orban, that it was literally the threat of destroying the Hungarian economy if this horse deal would not have been made. So he was I would not say that Orban is all good and the star of alternative, but definitely he has a feeling for Hungarian national interests, and he has now entered in a very severe conflict with European Union, which we have to understand is a super fascist entity, nothing else. From the Kalergi times on, this mentality has been developing, and Hitler had his views and so on. And European today is a machine to take sovereignty away from the national states. And Orban has a little bit different view. He would like to see, as his slogan is, Hungary for Hungarians, where I support him 100%. I say Slovenia for Slovenians, Norway for Norwegians, and so on. Not hating anybody else, respecting everybody, and so on. So let's not build our nationalism on hatred, but on self-respect and for respect of the others. And I feel some of this approach with Orban, and I hope he will be able to survive this political attack upon him.
Yeah, and that was Ben Toth from Hungary, who was on my show earlier this week. Hendrik, do you want to add to that anything?
No, I can agree completely. I think Orban is under pressure, and of course he will say no to this package, but in the end he says yes, because he knows if his standing point is no, then he will get problems with fundings from EU, with maybe sanctions against Hungary. So I think it's more or less only a pressure from EU.
Yeah, Blaz had mentioned extortion. I would also add blackmail. The EU, unelected body of people, as Blaz said, who are depriving the countries of Europe of their sovereignty, their independence. I'm hoping, as an outsider, that the EU will totally collapse, and these European countries will once again claim their sovereignty, their independence, and their dignity. Now, we were talking about the conflagration in the Middle East, the danger of it spreading. Well, the danger of it spreading in Ukraine is also very real and severe. And the talk has been from the United States side and the Russian side. I call it gaslighting, fear-mongering, the possibility of a nuclear escalation, a nuclear war. In an article today on Russia TV English channel, I'm sure it was reported on all the Russian channels, the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev came out with this statement. He was warning NATO of an apocalypse if Russia was attacked. Now, the American nuclear doctrine is a first strike attack on Russia, on anybody, but primarily on Russia. Russia's nuclear doctrine is not a first strike attack. It makes it very clear that if Russia is attacked with atomic bombs, or if the threat of the destruction of the Russian Federation is at stake, Russia will respond with its entire nuclear arsenal. In other words, to NATO, bye-bye Brussels, bye-bye Berlin, bye-bye London, bye-bye Paris, and bye-bye United States of America. Bruce, I'm going to come to you first. Your thoughts on the comments coming from both sides. In the American side, there's people in Congress who are saying, push the button, drop the bomb. Your thoughts, Bruce?
Well, I think the United States is getting desperate. They see the development of BRICS Plus. They see the growing de-dollarization going on around the world. They keep losing in their wars. They keep losing in their regime change operations. And so they are going and playing the only card they know, which is more NATO expansion, more war, more killing, more chaos. And so it's very natural that that's what the U.S. and its Western allies are going to do. Right now, the United States is introducing a new generation of nuclear weapons into its European deployment sites, which are Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Turkey, Italy, and now they're adding England as a new deployment site for nuclear weapons. And then they're planning these war games in the coming months, all the way through May. And they're nuclear war games. So they're practicing the delivery of nuclear weapons right along the Russian border. I just read this morning that the new leader of Finland is saying, we would love to have the United States and NATO nuclear protection. And if you need to put nuclear weapons here in our country, no problem. Well, that's a problem for Russia. And at the same time, the U.S. is playing these same games in South Korea. They're continually, in the last year, 365-day year, they had more than 200 days of offensive war games aimed at North Korea. And it was about nuclear attack by the United States on North Korea. And so these war games are also aimed at China and Russia as well. So the U.S. is doing this globally. And sooner or later, I fear that something's going to blow. So it doesn't surprise me that Russian politicians are reminding the West, they're really talking to the people, I think, in the West. Do you want your government to continue what they're doing to the point that you, the people, might die in a nuclear war? I think Russia is trying to remind them of that. And in a way, you can't really blame them.
Wow. I'll throw it over to Hendrik, and then we'll go to Blaz. It's really a very frightening scenario. I've been very concerned about this for almost 10 years. And I had predicted at the end of my film, 30 seconds to midnight, that was the doomsday clock for apocalypse. I said it was 30 seconds. And at the end of that, I said, well, those crazed neocons, you can call them whatever you want, in Washington, recognize they've lost this epic battle for control of the future order of the world, take us all down with them in a nuclear Armageddon. I am more afraid now than I was in 2016 when I released that film. Hendrik, your thoughts?
I think, unfortunately, the most people, at least I can only speak for Scandinavia, but the most people don't take it serious enough. And it is a really serious threat. When I was a politician in our regional parliament, I come up with the idea that our city could sign the ICAN international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. But we discussed this backwards, forwards, and the most other politicians said, no, this is a global issue. We cannot deal with this on a city level or regional level. So, and when we, on the other side, I think if Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia, says something, nobody hears it because we don't take him serious enough. And I think we should take him serious. And it looks for us, Norwegians at least, so that Vladimir Putin is a dictator and Dmitry Medvedev is only an idiot crying all the time something. But I think these two are well connected. So if Dmitry Medvedev says something, it is worth to hear about it or think about it at least. And of course, the threat of nuclear weapons, of a nuclear war is there, as you say. It's not 30 seconds to midnight anymore. It's much less, I think. So, but the problem is the people, at least in Scandinavia, we have no idea, no clue. We know that Russia is very dangerous, or we at least think that Russia is very dangerous, but what could happen? We have no idea, I think. And now we are starting for the first time since the Second World War to open American bases in Norway. It's completely crazy because, of course, these bases are a target for Russian nuclear weapons. So we are putting us in danger by ourselves. It's crazy.
Well, I've been telling people for a long time, Putin is the very polished statesman who speaks in very measured words and sentences. But Putin has made it clear exactly what I said, the Russian nuclear doctrine. He's made that clear on more than one occasion. Now, I do not believe that Dmitry Medvedev is a loose cannon. I don't think that would be allowed. He's a member of Putin's inner circle. He is speaking in language, as we've been talking about, to the people of the United States, the people of Europe, and NATO commanders, and the European Union, who are all creating this terrible problem. I don't want to call it good cop, bad cop, but I prefer to refer to it as like stereophonic sound. You have one channel when you have Putin, maybe on the same channel, you have Lavrov, who is the consummate diplomat, and then the other channel, you've got boom, boom, Medvedev. I think people ought to pay attention to what he says, and he's been saying it for quite a few months now. Blaz, we're going to turn it back to you. What are your thoughts from Slovenia?
Oh, from Slovenia, that is nobody awake in Slovenia apart from smaller circle of people. It's just like anybody else. But let me anyway add maybe additional dimension of thinking. We are in a position where the whole world is being controlled by less than 1% of the people, by the parasitic caste. And this system is very irrational and destructive, and it can only function if the people are terribly frightened all the time. So the things we see on a public scene, including Medvedev and all other politicians and sportsmen and Hollywood actors and anybody who, and Tucker Carlson's who has access to the public scene, it's a part of a performance. The real decision makers are behind. It's very logical, and they are pulling the strings now. Nuclear dimension. I suggest everybody should maybe at least refresh what was really happening during the Cold War. American researcher Alison McDowell and her Wrench in the Gears documents in a very detailed way the close cooperation of American and Soviet scientists meeting in Budapest and so on in developing nuclear technologies. So there are very strategic hidden interests behind who are actually pulling the strings. So we should not get too frightened, and I think that solutions will start to emerge when enough people demand that their national states must start functioning for them, which is today not the case. There is no solution that can miraculously come to fruition on the planetary level. We have to take care of things on the national level, and I only hope that the different forces in Russia will result in Russia distancing itself from the main globalists' technologies and trends, which is not yet the case. Because Russia or another important national state stopping to support the globalist network, this will be the beginning of the end. But Medvedev is one of the people who has no problem in participating in global institutions like World Bank, not him directly, but his circle of neoliberal friends. And yes, I support and I agree with his criticism of the so-called West. But again, it's not a problem of Russia and America. It's a problem of globalists against the people of the world. And there is actually no West. The Earth is round. India, China are also part of the global financial revolution of eliminating money as we have known 5,000 years and introducing the programmable tokens. So we should not lose sight of the national states as a starting point of defense and liberation.
Wow, that was very interesting, Blaz. And I think we should not forget the globalist. And I don't think we should forget the resistance that has risen up against the globalist agenda in places like China and Russia. It's not complete, but I think that we're beginning to see that this is the epic struggle for the future order of the world. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for this really riveting, interesting discussion. And I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully next week.
Thank you. All the best, guys. It was a pleasure. Hope to see you again. Bye.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.